Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Michigan. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth, wearing my Michigan Wolverines cap, and you'll know why in just a moment. I had to be joined by kneecap biting, smoking Jeremy. Welcome back to the big show, Jeremy.
Hey, glad to be here.
And George Icorn. He's
Good to
back.
be back here with you guys again.
Well, this show falls into the old category, keep it simple, stupid, because I only got three topics we're going to talk about. Three people, three topics. And when we have 2 3s, 33, that's my lucky number. If you get out of that, more power to you. All right, the topics we're going to talk about, probably a lot of Detroit fans wishes we didn't. The Detroit Lions lost, and we'll talk preview Michigan against Penn State. Plus, we're going to look into the firing of Carolina Panthers former coach Matt Rule. We'll get into that for a few minutes as well. But without further delay, Jeremy, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a synopsis about what we wish didn't occur out in New England, other than the fact that there was a Boston Tea Party and the Boston Massacre all the way out in Foxborough.
Oh, we made the Matt Patricia offense look almost legit. They've been averaging 18.5 points a game. Their offense put up 22 points against us, which we expected them to put up points against us because our defense has been bad. But our offense even laid an egg. I mean, it was horrible. That fumble, and if you actually look at it, the running back was on the other side of those guys. That ball hit the ground. It looked like he shuffled it from underneath while being tackled. It wasn't punched out because they showed it from another angle. It was not a punch out. It should have been considered a forward pass, but it wasn't. It should have been an incomplete pass. That being said, there was a lot of things wrong with this game. The play calling, he said he was going to go conservative. 0 for 6 on fourth down conversions. 4 of them should have been field goal kicks. 2 of them should have been punts. We got one of the best punters in the league that's great at doing that pooch punt that pins teams within the 20. And then the other 4, we just signed a kicker to replace the guy that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, who's an 80% kicker with a long of 59. None of them were longer than 52. Why didn't we kick field goals? That'd have been at least made us look like we had a semblance of an offense on the field. It would have been just as good as what Indy put up against Denver to win. It'd have been 12 points. It'd have been better than a goose egg.
Yeah, goose eggs aren't pretty. All right, George, give me your take on that.
Well, yeah, a lot of what Jeremy said is true. Of course, you're a great student of this game, and I have to agree with you. I mean, the in New England philosophy was, yeah, okay, then we'll kick field goals. You're not going to try field goals, then we're going to kick field goals. And what did they do? They won with field goals plus a defensive touchdown and a passing touchdown. You let a third string rookie quarterback beat you. That is pathetic. And that goes to say a lot about your defense again, although they only allowed 29 and instead of 45 or 48 or whatever. But
remember, it was 22 offensive points. That's why I pointed that. Yeah. I pointed that out on purpose because 7 of those points were due to the defense.
Right. But the Lions, yeah, again, I don't know the confidence level. Is there none? That can't be true in the kicking game, I wouldn't think. I mean, especially like you said, they brought in a new kicker this year. They got rid of Siebert this past week, and all of a sudden now you're not even using them. And plus the punting, like you mentioned, they got the best punter, I think, one of the top guys in the league in Fox. So there's a lot of questioning again. And here we go again, questioning the head coach. That's not good. That's not good when people have to question the head coach every week on some of these things that a head coach should know and know how to use as far as strategy goes in games.
Well, I will tell you one thing about Bailey Zappi that you guys don't realize. He's not your average third-string quarterback.
No, I realize this. But at the same time, I watched a lot of his game film in college. He would have 1 or 2 good games, and then he'd have a snoozer where he'd have a bad game. And that's what you expect out of a rookie. He had his decent game last week. He should have had a snoozer this week if the defense could have did anything. But he evaded pressure like he was Jalen Hurts. I mean, we got to the quarterback 6 times and no sacks.
Well, the reality is I know Bailey Zappi because covering Florida Atlantic University, I've seen him play at Western Kentucky, and here's a guy that nearly had 6,000 yards passing, 62 touchdowns. And, you know, I think he probably would have been a day 1 or 2 pick. And what really baffles me a little is the Lions coaching staff, you know, coached him up during the, I believe, Senior Bowl it was. And they knew about the guy. You know, at some point or another, you might need a quarterback. Why didn't you grab him, let alone the fact that you're coaching this guy? So,
well, yeah, that's a good point, Scott. The Lions did coach that Senior Bowl, and you told us on a previous show a week or two ago. I remember you told us about him and that to watch out for this kid. Like you said, you've had the privilege of seeing some of his play in his career. I you know, again, the Lions did not want to draft a quarterback. That was quite obvious in the last draft. And, you know, Jeremy, you track all that stuff about the quarterbacks and getting drafted and that sort of thing.
I wanted 3 quarterbacks in the late rounds, one of them being Bailey Zappi, the other one being Skylar Thompson. And then the other one is, if we didn't take one, the UDFA, who got picked up by the Panthers, that actually won them their second game against the same team they beat at the beginning of the season.
right.
Because we all knew Shea Patterson and Paxton Lynch are not NFL quality quarterbacks, but we thought they might be able to do something in the USFL. Right. Shea Patterson gets cut. They start Paxton Lynch. They pick up Eric Barriere. Paxton Lynch gets hurt in his second game. He comes in, gets him within 3 points in the first game he ever played against semi-pro talent. Mm-hmm. That tells you the kid's got some talent.
Yeah.
And then his first start was the last game of the season. He wins the game.
Well, let me go back to my point about Bailey Zappi. Okay, number one, I think people in Michigan can understand when you had RG3 and then they decided to draft Kirk Cousins. I think Mike Shanahan did that. So, and who outlasted who? Kirk Cousins outlasted RG3. Well, you know, I'm not going to create a quarterback controversy in New England, but you do have Mac Jones, who was obviously the 15th overall pick, came from the Saban tree in Alabama. And by the way, Bailey Zappi and Bill Belichick looks like a genius for taking this guy. He really, really does. Now, I know the one thing a lot of people in Detroit would have a hard time is that Matt Patricia got the last laugh. And I'll tell you where I was at when you were watching that game. I was at Inter Miami, and that game was a joke. They were playing the Montreal team, and the only goal that Inter Miami bothered to score was off of an own goal by Montreal. So it was 3-1. I mean, you want to talk about a gaffe and a joke.
Oh, my gosh. Talk about it.
In Miami, but that football or whatever you want to call it, I went to that brand of football on Sunday while you were watching the other one. And I don't know, both games were ugly, but you know, sport made me feel like I'm glad I didn't go to a sports bar and spend money to watch what you guys did. Although I saw it wasn't overly that pretty in the first place. So
no, it wasn't. It was a pitiful game and a pitiful effort, and you should not be shut out anytime in the NHL, let alone by a rookie quarterback.
NHL? I don't know.
NFL.
Oh, NFL. Yeah.
That's okay. He had two of the consonants right, the NL.
Let's go back to the presser Dan Campbell said on Friday. We're going to be more conservative this game. You know what I saw? Bullshit.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. He went for it 6 times on 4th down, one of them being a 4th and 19, and he called a draw play again on 4th and 19. This is exactly what happened when we played the Seahawks last year. It's the exact same thing. Ramondre Stevenson looked like the next coming of Marshawn Lynch. 33 carries for 163 yards? You got if Dan Campbell's not careful, he's going to lose the locker room.
Right.
Because
it looked like they gave up at halftime.
It does. It did look that way. And that's a new NFL record, I believe, 0 for 6 as far as going forward on 4.
So now he's 7 of 18. He's less than 500%.
You know, it really baffles me. I don't care if it's a college or pros. Sometimes I wonder why coaches go for it too much on 4th down when you can't kick field goals if you need to. And I'm not getting into that tonight.
Oh, I am.
See it a lot. Why? Because unfortunately, I have to see it once in a while when I'm covering the Miami Hurricanes, and I see all these. See, college. If you covered college football enough, Jeremy, there's 2 things you got to understand, my friend. Number 1, I see too many teams going for it on 4th down, and 2, field goal kicking to me is a mystery. So you don't want field goal kickers. And if you can avoid now, Ali Haji Sheiks don't grow on trees. He was pretty good. Okay,
Yes,
but the rest of them, it was another story.
Yeah.
So all in all, I don't know. I wonder. I mean, listen, Dan Campbell comes in hyped. He has that, but at some point the honeymoon's going to end after year 3 or 4, and then you wonder what's what. You just hope it doesn't end too soon because you like the guy. And when I was at a Miami Dolphins draft a couple of years ago, and he finished 5-7, he was the interim coach of the Dolphins. They all liked him, but they just wonder whether his hype would eventually wear out and be able to make it over a long period of time. But I'm not knocking him. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt right now. I'm not blaming injuries. Everybody's got injuries nowadays. I don't care what receivers are missing. Now, we'll go on from the Detroit Lions to another lion called the Penn State Nittany Lions, okay? Now, how do you like that analogy, folks? Okay. And they'll be taking on Michigan Wolverines. Wolverines 6-0. And yes, they're bowl eligible. Yeah, right. Okay. Considering who they played. But they're one of the first teams that are bowl eligible. So, George, why don't you size up the Michigan-Penn State game for me, please?
Well, it's going to be the biggest test so far, no doubt about it, for Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. Obviously, they had a patsy schedule, the preseason. I call it the preseason, the warm-up games. Michigan dominated those teams that they played. Last week, a little bit of a scare against Indiana for part of that game. Michigan wasn't as dominant as I thought they could have been. They dropped one spot in the polls, and I think the voters looked at that and said, wait a minute, you guys are supposed to blow this team out. Well, it wasn't quite that kind of a blowout. And I think that Michigan has the right weapons to win over Penn State. I'd be a little bit more hesitant if the game was played in Happy Valley. But because the game is played at U of M in front of 110,000, mostly Wolverine fans, I think that Harbaugh has his act together. I mean, the running game, everything seems to be clicking pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect. It's nothing's perfect in his lineup right now, but things are clicking rather well. That being said, Penn State gives them, like I said, the toughest challenge they've had so far this year. And although I think Michigan will win, it would not surprise me if this game goes down to the end. It could be won in a 3-point type of game.
Well, let me go over some interesting information about J.J. McCarthy. When he starts and finishes a Michigan drive, U of M has produced 23 touchdowns and 6 field goals on 46 possessions, translating to points on 63% of his drives. And 5 starts, the team has scored 23 of 26 red zone trips, 88.5% with 20 touchdowns. I don't know about you, but I like those numbers. And, here is another little couple more tidbits about McCarthy. Boy, he's got some pretty good ones, too, I should put out there. McCarthy has a rating of 15.4 yards per attempt on play action and 4 touchdown passes on 25 play action dropbacks, best in the nation. McCarthy has accounted for 10 touchdowns overall, with 7.5 touchdown percentage through the air. His season-long yards per attempt figure, 9.6, ranks 8th in the nation. I'm giving you guys a lot of numbers out there. He also ranks 5th in pass efficiency, 182.1, and has an NFL passer rating of 128.2 this season, which is 5th. And a couple of other things worth noting, okay, that McCarthy's completion percentage remains the best in the country among qualified passers at 78.3%, 94 of 120. And he's fresh off his first 300-yard passing game, 304 at Indiana, and 6 of his 9 passing touchdowns have come against the blitz. So that's a lot there. So why don't you go ahead, Jeremy, and kind of break down the logistics of the tail of the tape with McCarthy. But before you do that, I should also point out that the U of M offensive line has permitted 24 negative plays on an even 400 offensive snaps, 4 per game, or on 6% of all offensive snaps. When the line does allow a sack, it comes of an average of 5.65 seconds to throw, second most among those 120-plus dropbacks. And then lastly, okay, opponents have hurried or sacked a U of M passer 12 times across 24 quarters of play. U of M ball carries losses 151 yards and 238 rush attempts. And that does not include sacks. All right, that's a lot to talk about. Who gets the dubious task of translating it?
Well, the sacks, when you talk about 5 to 6.5 seconds, that means he's holding on to the ball too long is why he's taking sacks. Those are coverage sacks. That means he's not rolling out of the pocket at the right time on those ones. And he's not evading the pressure. And which is one of the things that I said it could be a drawback to him later on against high pressure teams. Because like Ohio State that has a great secondary, I'm not worried about Michigan State anymore because they barely have a defense, but I am worried about this Penn State defense because they are linebacker U for a reason.
Right.
And they've actually been producing decent safeties of late. So if he's holding the ball long against this team this week, we may see a lot more sacks than what we have seen out of him. He's got to get better at reading when the pressure's coming and getting out of the pocket or getting rid of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I think that's a good point, Jeremy. And Scott, you have the stats right there in front of you. Getting the ball out quicker and quickly against these skilled teams. Like you said, the linebackers are solid with Penn State. The secondary is better. That's very important. And again, the offensive weapon with him being able to run, of course, is always a plus in his favor. Just protect that ball, kid. When you run, protect that ball. And you got Blake Corum back there too. You got a good, solid running game going. Don't be afraid to try to run that ball, and I'm sure they will heavily against Penn State.
Prayers up for Mike Hart.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I hear he had a seizure on the field.
He had a seizure on the field, and I know he was released that night and able to travel with the team home. But, will he be able to be on the sideline again? That's another question.
Well, maybe he just needs to take a break first before we worry about that. Before I go any further in the show here, I do want to point out some information for all you folks that are joining us tonight. Subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel or visit www.southfloridatribune.com and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a hard time going through the website, go to youtube.com, look for South Florida Tribune, hit the subscribe button to get all the notifications of all the shows that we have. We're like Canada. We go far and wide a little bit with our shows. We from baseball to obviously, the Fire Up series. So check out the South Florida Tribune website, and you'll be able to find that under WSFT, South Florida Tribune drop-down broadcast, and we have a lot of great shows out there. So, the Michigan versus Penn State game ought to be interesting. Again, the Michigan soft schedule gets them criticized nationally, but unlike Ohio State and Michigan State, the Wolverines do find a way to beat Nebraska. Of course, nowadays everybody does. And
I was say, wait. You can't say about Nebraska.
And they do manage to beat Penn State, not like going to big-time droughts here. They probably might get their due against Michigan State this year. So any closing thoughts about the Penn State-Michigan contest?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a much closer game than anybody wants it to be because both teams are decent offensively. Both teams have, so far, a decent defense, but who have we played? That's the problem.
Yeah. And it's, that's a good point. And another thing that's interesting, guys, is Michigan is stuck on that 12 noon start. I guess it doesn't matter. Because Fox loves to kick off the day on Saturday at noon, so I shouldn't worry about it. And I know Bo Schembechler up wherever he is, hopefully upstairs, is looking down on it and smiling because, he loved those early starts on Saturday as opposed to the late ones. But it's interesting that they're not putting Michigan on evening games or even the 4:00 game. And this Saturday, again, we got Michigan State instead of Michigan at 4 p.m. So
who's Michigan State playing?
I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. I can't.
Well, you know what, though, George? Well, I'll let you go ahead and get rid of that blank in a moment. But Michigan is 6-0 in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 1976-77. It's the third time under head coach Jim Harbaugh that the Wolverines have started 6-0 mark to begin the season. He did it in 2016-21. And I'll tell you right now, I'm glad for the noon start because I have the Battle of Owls. I have Florida Atlantic University Owls against the Rice Owls, and that game starts at 6 up in Boca. I actually get to see one of these things. I do.
All
so
right.
I'm happy to go ahead and watch an early game for a change. Otherwise, I'm usually tied up anyway. So
The only thing I hate about noon games is I'm at work till 6 o'clock on Saturdays.
Oh, well, that doesn't help you at all, then, does it?
No, a nice primetime game would make my day.
I mean, I don't know if that's anything to worry about. Like I said, it doesn't seem to bother the fans. They like to have probably the 12 noon start, get an early start on tailgating. Wisconsin at Michigan State, Scott, 4 o'clock.
You and I once saw a Wisconsin-Michigan State game up at Spartan Stadium. One other fact worth noting, U of M is scoring 43 points per game, though again, I wonder how deceiving that is, and allowing 11.3 points against on average. The only teams with top 10 rankings in scoring offense and scoring defense are Alabama 6th offense, 6th defense, Michigan 7th offense, and 5th defense. I should point out, even though it's not related to what we're doing, congratulations on James Madison University. There's a school here that just entered the FBS, and after its 5th game, cracked the top 25. And why am I bringing
congratulations to them?
Yeah, you know what? They were a powerhouse at the other level, and for all of us that are Michigan people, once upon a time Appalachian State was there. So watch out for James Madison. No, not the president, but the university. So
right.
But we'll keep it on that part of the country. I only want to get to one more subject tonight, and that's Matt Rule getting fired. Probably the worst kept secret on the planet, Jeremy. So give me your take on that.
I said if they struggled early, he should be gone by week 6. I pretty much called it. This is week 6.
But he's got $40 million coming, so I don't think
he's got $40 million coming unless he's picked up in a coaching role anytime within then, and then the compensation goes down. So I think if a team picks him up, they're going to do exactly like what the Patriots are doing to make it so Patricia and Judge still get their money from the Lions in New York, call them assistants, right, and not give them a coaching role.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Go ahead, George. Matt, I mean, let's face it, I have a lot of people that I deal with from the Charlotte area. One of them, as we know, is Jennifer Matthews Lewis, who's been jumping up, doing cartwheels after this one. And we have a lot of Charlotte people that are really applauding the move. I hate to see a person lose his job, but unfortunately, his record doesn't help his cause.
Since he's been there, I've called him the Pampers for a reason.
Yeah. What did he have? 11 wins?
11 wins, 25 losses.
Yeah, well,
11, 25 or 27. I don't know. It was a lot.
It was 25 losses.
A lot of people.
Oh, wait, no. It's 25 losses when the other team scores 17 points as a minimum.
Right. Okay.
You mean
it is 11 and 27. That's what it is.
I thought it was. All right, don't mess with me here. I know my stats, buddy. But
I forgot. I was a key stat that I wanted to bring up about losing. The only team in the NFL to lose when a team scores 17 points.
Well, that's the difference.
25 times.
Because I recently looked at number, and you're right there. But I knew it was 11 and 27. All right, I can't go on.
Well, I mean, that's typical of the NFL, though. I mean, they want to fire their coach. Obviously, that's their prerogative, despite the fact that the owner, I guess, last offseason kind of gave him a vote of confidence. Now Detroit people are saying, oh, wait a minute now. How long are we going to give Dan Campbell? Let's do the Campbell comparison to Matt Rule. And, I mean, come on, folks.
That's apples to oranges. It's a totally different talent level on the team.
Right. You cannot do that. That is not a fair comparison. Detroit is rebuilding practically, as we know, from scratch and bringing in a new quarterback and a new scheme and everything else new. So a lot of folks are hollering on the air today in town here about, oh, well, he only won 11 games. Campbell's only got, 4 wins in a year and 1/4. I mean, so it's not going to happen.
You're talking apples to oranges, like I said.
Yep,
I mean, we still got a week schedule, but some of those teams are playing way better than we thought they would this year.
I know they are, especially the
and that just shows the parity in the NFL that everybody has wanted.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. They got to come out of that bye week, as you guys know, and be fired up down in Dallas. They got to be fired up.
Healthy.
And healthy.
We got to be healthy. We got to be healthy. I mean, it was nice to see Jacobs and Pascal practicing again. I didn't think they'd start. I was hoping when I saw Amani Oruwariye was a healthy scratch that Jacobs was going to get in there. It was good to see Iffy playing again. He actually wasn't bad. Okuda was the only corner who did anything the whole game.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than going into a bye week getting your tail kicked. That's for sure.
Oh, you're not kidding, Scott. Plus,
I had to live it a couple weeks ago when Miami got waxed by Middle Tennessee State University, and you know what? Middle Tennessee got lost the last couple of games, and it makes us look even a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
So you go into a bye week with a bad taste in your mouth, and you lose, and let alone by 3 or 4 touchdowns, 20 some odd points. It is an ugly feeling. It really is. But Matt Rule, I mean, let's face it, the rumors now are saying that he's going to college. I don't know what.
And if he goes to college, he'll still get all his money from Carolina because it has to be a coaching role on an NFL team.
Oh, is that right? Is that how that works?
That is how that works. So if he goes to college, he'll still get paid. Just like who was it that got fired by Detroit that went to a college team and he got paid the whole time? Wasn't it Morningweg that went to a college team after he left Detroit? Because I know he didn't come back to the NFL. I know it's one of them.
What did he do? Drive his motorcycle to the new gig because he got sick and tired of driving a car? I had to throw that analogy, Detroit fans.
Yeah, that's great.
Marty Morningwood, there's a name of that. Yet he's managed to hang around as an NFL assistant, as an offensive coordinator. Then again,
I called that whole 10 years the Eminem decade of despair.
Oh, yeah. Eminem.
Millen and Morningweg, Millen and Mariucci, Millen and Marinelli. It was horrible.
Yep.
Well, don't get too deep in the M&Ms. My dad's name is Eminem, but you know, I put him in a lot more high regard than the 3 that you clowns use.
Yeah, for sure. Of course.
So I wasn't sure. So I guess, all right, so let's just have a little bit of fun with this Matt Rule thing, and we'll wrap it up in about 5-7 minutes or so. If you were going to predict, Jeremy, what college he'd go to, where do you think would be the best fit?
Well, I don't think he'd fit back where he was because they're actually doing okay. I think possibly one of the ones that just got fired. Okay. I mean, either any of them that are just fired, and there's other coaches on the hot seat that may be fired too. If he goes to college, he's got it made. He can take a penance of a salary till the 3 years of his coaching salary is done with the NFL.
Well, you know where I think would be a good fit, believe it or not? I think he'd be a better fit in Arizona State. That situation is an absolute mess. It's in the Southwest. Herman Edwards left it badly. He really, really did.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that he could restore a little bit of integrity.
That's not a bad guess, Scott. Arizona State, yeah.
Who's the other one? Scott Frost from Nebraska?
Oh, yeah. There's another one.
Yeah, but you know what? Believe it or not, I think Frost will land somewhere else but a smaller school.
Right. He'll probably go FCS is what I'm thinking. Go to one of those smaller schools that's more of a defensive-minded school where they don't have a high-powered offense, and I think he'd do good there.
All right, but let's stay on point with Matt Rule. I say Arizona State. Wisconsin, I don't see it only because Jim Leonard, to me, if he has a halfway decent finish, he's going to get the full-time job. I know he's from there, so I would rule that out. Lance Leipold, I think, is going to try to build his legacy at Kansas. But, George, you want to take a running guess on this one?
I'll go with Arizona State also, guys. That's a good opportunity for him. Nice Northwest, great climate down there, and I don't see him going to another pro job right now. I think college is going to be his best bet. I really do, and and he could do well there. So I'll go with ASU with my second choice, Nebraska.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true. I think Nebraska would be a good fit, too.
That's what I was saying, where Scott Frost left Nebraska. That was the other one.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's fine. At least you're able to clarify a little bit now. But that's fine. Yeah, Scott Frost, I think, will land somewhere at some point. And I know if a team's really desperate, don't be surprised if John Gruden and Urban Meyer's names surface at some point.
Oh.
Urban Meyer already did. He got an interview with Notre Dame.
What?
Oh.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, George, I know you're a big Notre Dame guy, but I did predict Notre Dame to beat BYU on Saturday, just so you know.
Thank you. And they should be ranked 25th or 24th in the nation. And I saw they weren't. They're
Don't
four
push
and
it.
they're 4-2, just like other teams are 4-2 in
No,
our
I think
ranks.
they're 3-2, aren't they?
No,
Yeah, they're-
4-2.
Hmm.
Yep.
I don't know.
That's okay. They're
No,
in the
no.
other. They're in the other category. They got
No.
votes.
Yeah,
You
they
know, I think the best thing for Notre Dame to do, and it's been offered and they're contemplating it, is not go to the ACC with football, but go to the Big Ten.
yeah,
I don't know. I think they're afraid of getting their tails wagged. I really do.
I know they are, but you know,
Yeah.
I'm talking about money-wise. It would be
Well-
the smart direction to go.
I think that as long as NBC is still writing those checks, I don't think they're going anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't they get like an awkward lifetime contract with NBC?
It's going to be up to NBC. If NBC starts saying, wait a minute now, I want to be part of this Big Ten expansion, or I want to be part of the, another super conference, I
right.
think then you're going to see some action by Notre Dame because, well, I mean, another network could pick up Notre Dame, of course, but as long as they've got that allegiance to NBC, my God, it goes back decades.
To Lou Holtz.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame going to the Big Ten, it's not a matter if it's a matter of when. I really do. I don't know when, but we'll see. That's where I'm at. So with that said,
Yeah.
So any final thoughts, Jeremy, George, about the Lions?
They got to get right. They got to get healthy. They got to start being better. It's got to be coached better on both sides of the ball. Dan Campbell's not afraid to pull somebody's play calling duties and let somebody else take over. Maybe it's time to see what either Calvin Shepard or Aubrey Pleasant has, because Todd Wash ain't the answer because he hasn't got the D-line doing crap.
Okay, George, some thoughts about the Lions.
Well, just 2 cents about Jared Goff. Again, it's not totally his fault. Even though you're shut out, it's easy to blame the quarterback. Hey, listen, he had some great games this season so far as we know. And you just cannot put all the blame on him. I know some people would like to heap the blame on him, and a quarterback always gets the blame, obviously, in a loss. But no, this was a lot to do with coaching more than anything else, and plus execution. And like you said earlier, Jeremy, they just were not totally excited. I don't know what it was. They didn't come out with the fire that they should have against New England. So they got to get that fire back in their bellies too.
I mean,
Well,
2 trips to the red zone and no points. That tells you everything.
If anybody's going to put the Patriots in the playoffs, and they're really drinking a bad Kool-Aid, because I wouldn't judge a win over the Lions as my ticket to get in the playoffs. Sorry about that. So, all right. So let's have some predictions here about Penn State, Michigan. Lead off, Jeremy.
I think Michigan can eke out a close one. They've got enough talent on both sides of the ball. It really depends on if that O-line can remain just as stout as it has all year. But we haven't seen them face a good pressure team yet.
So give me a score.
It's going to be a lot lower scoring than fans want. I'm going to say like 28-21 or 28-24.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, George, give me a score.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be very close. Like I said earlier, I mean, I don't think it'll be as close as one field goal, but I'm going to go with very close to Jeremy. I'm going to go 27-20 U of M.
And I'll go 33-26 in favor of Michigan. So there you go. So I think we're all thinking along the same lines. With that said, I'll go over my information real quickly, and then George and Jeremy can do the same. Subscribe to the South Florida Tribune on our YouTube channel, or visit www.southfloridatribune.com, and follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. To advertise, call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And if you have a hard time finding us through the website, just go to youtube.com and look for South Florida Tribune. Just subscribe that way. Also, kudos to Candy Ebling, does a marvelous job with her ability to get stories up there in a timely manner, as well as get the broadcast up there. Without Candy Ebling, we'd all have a hard time making sure the Tribune becomes a worthwhile platform, that we're working diligently to do that. George, I'm going to save you for last because you have the book. So go ahead, Jeremy, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Well, you can get a hold of me right like it says underneath my face there, Kneecap Biting with Smoking Jeremy B on YouTube. You can also find me on the Motor City Kneecap Biters page I created when we hired Dan Campbell. You also can find me on the South Florida Tribune. Go to where the menu is. Go to Motor City Tribune, and I'm in the list of authors of editorials there. That being said, this just in, the bye week is favored by 14.5 points over the Lions.
I don't know how to top that one, Scott.
No, you know what, George? I'm not so sure I can't either, so I'm not going to try. You know what, Jeremy? You know, baseball season's over, but we don't see you throwing any curveballs. You just did. Sorry, I'm not going there. All right.
That was a good one, though. Come on.
All right. All right.
Why do you think we're all tongue-tied with it? It was good. That's the whole thing.
On Twitter, you can get a hold of me
here. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, Twitter at SNG Sports 99. Yeah, I'm the author of a book called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. It's been out for a few years, but it's still a very good read, a nice, easy read. Lots of pictures of all the greats like Ernie Harwell, Ty Tyson, Van Patrick, Ray Lane, and Scott, you're in there as well. You got some great pictures of you interviewing Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors, two of the greatest athletes, obviously, this country's ever seen. So it's available with a link on the South Florida Tribune, Motor City Tribune website. At the end of any column that I write, you'll see a link there and get a copy of it. And looking forward to sending you one if you care to buy one. So thanks again for the time. And this has been a great show. Looking forward to it again.
Coming up afterwards on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, we have Fire Up Florida. John Carosello, a guy that I found from the University of Florida, will be on there, along with Avi Greenwald and Mark Mancini. We're talking college sports tonight. John is a big Gator follower. I thought, why not bring him on there and talk Gators? And we'll be talking about the Florida State Seminoles, as well as a little bit of information on Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. So a good show lined up. So stay with the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Not only you get this Fire Up Michigan, but you also get a crack at Fire Up Florida as well. So meanwhile, George, Jeremy, not that I have any doubt that you guys work well together, because if you didn't, I wouldn't have you on every week, but you guys are absolutely fantastic, and I appreciate what you bring here to the network anyway. So meanwhile, great show tonight. Of course, I should be biased, okay, but maybe not, whatever. But on behalf of Kneecap Biting Jeremy and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgenroth, appropriately named the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fire Up Michigan, and we will catch you the next time. Take care, everybody, and have yourself a great week. Bye now.
Bye-bye.